So your factory finishes production and you conduct a pre-shipment inspection. You look at your inspection report and you learn that your purchase order is full of defects. Now, your instinct might tell you that these issues all happened because of the things that went wrong on the production line. And that may be true, but a lot of the times the problems with your shipment actually start months earlier, and they can be prevented by making smarter decisions before production. So let's talk to Andy Church, Insight's founder, about how to prevent defects and avoid frustration. Thank you for joining me. Defect prevention happens because of the foundation that you lay with your supplier from day one. So today we're talking about how to build that foundation, and I'm hoping we can start with a story. So would you tell me about a time that a shipment failed final inspection where the real problem actually started months earlier? Where did it begin and what was the cost to the importer?
We had a recent example of where that happened when a Softlines apparel client of ours who creates a lot of outdoor active wear approved a sample. Their productions was being made in Africa, in Kenya. The factory was set up by a Chinese company who opened an additional factory outside of China. And, with that, you would think that they have the processes, the knowledge, everything would be fine. But it wasn't. What happened was the approval sample met the client's needs. It was perfect. Production went on. And what ended up failing inspection was the factory and the client not being aligned on defects or what causes a defect or the specification. We all have bought clothes, whether it be a value item, it's a couple bucks, maybe a t-shirts at an arts and crafts store, or a high-end t-shirt that could be, $100 plus. And oftentimes we can use those two examples of what's acceptable quality. At the lower value item, you're often going to have stray threads or things that aren't going to cause you not to buy it. But if you're spending $100 on a t-shirt, you don't want a stray thread. You don't want to pull it off, get your own pair of scissors or something like that. And in this case, these were about a $25, $30 shirt, often the type of shirt that I wear, short sleeve, active, sailing, fishing type of thing. And they had a lot of short thread, untrimmed threads that were about a half inch or so. And some clients would call that a minor defect, someone a major, some wouldn't call it anything. And this is why it's very important to assure that your requirements are what is being manufactured and not somebody else's, and why it's important to align with the factory. Because if you have incomplete specifications, incomplete definitions on the type of defect, you're going to wind up with a disagreement on whether the shipment meets your requirements or what was agreed upon. And so in this case, the inspection failed. I don't remember the exact quantities, but it was 10 to 15,000 shirts, I think. And different sizes, different colors. And in the end, the factory had to rework every shirt, which means they had to do 100% sword inspection, look for untrimmed threads. Any shirt that had untrimmed threads that didn't meet, the criteria of what was acceptable had to be reworked, trimmed, and then repackaged. And then in this case, they were re-inspected, which is a best case or a best practice is on product that's been reworked and then repackaged is to conduct a re-inspection, which is a whole nother topic of issues around re-inspections. But in this case, it ended up costing the factory, they don't share their numbers, but I would guess 3 or 4 days worth of production, about 20 workers to work through this. And so thousands and thousands of dollars. Had this been done in the West, you would have been talking $15,000 to $20,000 probably to rework. So in the end, this issue came down to not being aligned on specifications. The shipment failed in June. The mistake happened months earlier, and now it's a scramble to fix to meet the vessel and deliver on time to the end retail client. So the bottom line is Common root causes all go back to communication, specification, ensuring everybody is on the same page and aligned and having detailed criteria so disagreements like this don't end up causing lots of delays, financial resources that could have been avoided.
So, in this example of the company manufacturing in Kenya, it really came down to the definitions and how those defects were defined. Because, as you said, there's a difference between a company that's selling a $30 shirt and a $100 shirt and what kind of expectations they have for quality. So yeah, it's important to define those defects and make sure all parties are on the same page. Now, we often talk about how the early decisions that are around things like supplier selection, specifications, approved samples, and materials are crucial. So, of those things I've just mentioned, which one do you think importers get wrong the most often?
Specifications. Not everyone interprets the same way. Factories need detailed measurements, requirements, tolerances, approved construction methods, details on packaging. Oftentimes, we have clients that work with packaging engineers. That'll be another topic in the future. But it's critical that you avoid phrases or specifications like high quality finish. A high quality finish to one person can mean something very different to another. We work with a couple of clients who make bathroom fixtures. Some are in the water faucets, shower heads, sink faucets, that type of thing. And other ones, another client makes the towel racks and things like that. Two different factories, two different vendors selling to the same retailer. And it's important that the finish matches. So just saying oil rub bronze or antique brass isn't enough. It's to have an approval sample. There's chips that can be made, that type of thing. Avoid ambiguous terms. Ambiguity is one of the biggest causes of quality problems.
Yeah, so really the key thing is to avoid ambiguity, right? We don't want to just say high quality finish. We want a definition of what that is, and that could come in the shape of the approval sample, maybe like a Pantone color, something like that. You've made some great points, and we're about to get into how to approach things in a smarter way. But first, I'd just like to ask our viewer, if you've faced this type of situation before and you have an anecdote or a tip to share, be sure to leave it down in the comments. Otherwise, you can give us a like or subscribe, because if you've made it this far, then I'm sure you'll get value out of our future discussions as well. But anyways, Andy, let's give people an actionable tip. So, if an importer could fix just one thing about their buying process to prevent quality problems, what should it be and where should they start?
I think one of the biggest things that importers can do is slow down. I talk fast. My Chinese team, our Asia team often says, boss, slow down, slow down. I talk fast. And sometimes when we're on a team call with some of our Asia team and a client that is also based in the West and they talk fast like me, the only two people that understand anything are me and our client because we're talking so fast. And this often gets translated in emails, or somebody's so fast to reply to an email and something comes in or they send a thought before they finished. And so I think it's important to recognize slow down. I often have to say that to myself. Invest more time in supplier communication, supplier qualification, a specification review, production kickoff, because every hour you spend before production can save many hours later. I heard a phrase not too long ago that preparation costs pennies, correction costs dollars. And my father growing up, and even today, now that he's in his 80s, often likes to say PPP, preparation precedes performance. And he'll get a kick out if he's watching this video because I think that is very apropos in what we do for our clients and how we interact with them and their factory suppliers who are also our clients, because while oftentimes we work for importers, retailers in the West, and they're the ones paying us, we're also in the factory. And we consider them a client because it's important that we communicate with them and we make sure that everything is aligned between what we believe that we're conducting for our client in the West, what the factory or the supplier thinks we're going to be coming in and conducting. And so preparation costs pennies, correction costs dollars.
Yeah, that's a great line. Preparation costs pennies, correction costs dollars. I like that. But yeah, you've made a great point about really slowing down so that everyone is on the same page. Especially when you're dealing with suppliers and partners overseas, that's absolutely crucial. So I'd like to get a little bit contrarian here now, Andy. What would you say is a piece of standard quality advice that you actually think is wrong or overrated? And what should importers be doing instead?
Well, as a third party inspection provider, we also conduct audits and testing. I would say one of the biggest pieces of quality that is overrated is ensure you inspect every order. Yeah, I mean, inspections, that's our business. We love working with clients who want to ensure that the product that they receive meets their expectations and their specifications. But as you have or develop a mature quality program, you may not need to inspect every order. And certainly 100% inspections are not the answer. There's cases and needs for when 100% or a stored inspection should be done or can be something that we would suggest. But inspections don't inspect quality into a product. They're a verification tool and they're not a manufacturing process. They can minimize the risk that you'll receive product that doesn't meet your requirements, that isn't of the quality you want, or has another issue. And so just inspect it doesn't solve issues. Inspections are a valuable and important piece of a quality program, but don't rely on inspections to ensure that you have quality shipments coming your way because they're a tool, they're not the fix all.
Yeah, that's great advice, Andy. Some people might not expect to hear that from us, but yeah, maybe when you're just starting out, it makes sense to inspect every order or when you have you know, a smaller amount of production. But as your program matures, you can kind of lighten that up.
Let me add to that,
So,
Billy. Let me
sure,
let maybe add into
go
this
ahead.
at the end. And I've often used the phrase or variations of the phrase that maximize your quality spend. And so when I say a mature quality program may not require or necessitate or at some point there's diminishing returns in inspecting every order or every shipment. If you're ordering the same item on a regular cadence from the same factory and you are using the data available from inspection reports, pass fail, OQL levels, that type of thing, you can use that data to maximize your quality spend so you're not inspecting at a factory that has very high quality consistently delivered to you. And maybe you increase inspections at a factory that is having some production quality issues. Maybe they've had some management turnover and now you're seeing some quality issues. And you can use that same money in conducting inline inspections somewhere else. So inspections are a tool, they're not a fix. And we're available. Reach out to me, Billy, or team if you have questions about inspections, frequency, the cadence, requirements. We're here to help you understand, develop, and implement inspection programs.
Yeah, you've made some great points here, Andy. So thank you for sharing those words of advice. And to our viewer, we hope that this helps you get a better idea of how to manage quality well from the start. So if you need help auditing your factory, conducting on-site inspections, reach out to us through our website, as Andy mentioned. And if you have any thoughts or questions, whether you agree, you disagree, or have an anecdote to share, just leave a comment below. And be sure to like and subscribe to get more tips like the ones we've shared today. So, take care.